Ciao, jewelry making friends. My name is Joey Balistreri, for those of you who don't know me yet. And today I have a really interesting project. I'm going to be making some of my own findings, but it is not what you think. Not the normal jump rings, ear wires, bracelet hooks, you know, the normal things, head pins. I do that a lot in my videos. I love to make my own jump rings and my own little rosette or spiral head pins, but I found something in my travels. There were two of these pendant, well, they're donut pendant makers, I guess. They're called they're called bales at the shop, but they are commercially made and they are soldered. So you can see, like right here, it's soldered, and you can see right here this little part that holds the gemstone is soldered. And what these are made to hold is these classic semi-precious gemstone donuts. And so the donut just slips in the front, and then, you know, it can still spin around, and then you could use it for different ones. Now, I only had in my stash, I had this one and I had this rhodonite, and oh my gosh, you guys, I wish I could share this with you, but this was $9.99 originally. It was $10 for two of these giant rhodonite donuts, and they went on clearance at Michael's for $7.99, but then I picked it up at their end of the year sale for 99 cents for both of them. So it's not the most beautiful rhodonite in the world. I love rhodonite when it's pink and that earthy brown and beige. There's a lot of darkness in these, but for 99 cents I got them to play with. And so here's where making your own little bale could really be useful depending on the size of your donut. This is quite pretty in here, but it doesn't quite fit. This one is really too large for this finding. So, and here again, this was $4.99 for two of these. And I was traveling when I bought these, and I stopped in a bead shop in, I think it was Sarasota, Florida. It's actually in one of my videos. So, you know, you got two in the bag, and that's $2.50 per bale. I think there were two in this bag, or did I? Yes, two pieces for $5. But I started looking at it and I thought, how can I make my own? So this was my first little prototype, and it's not great, but I did work out the logistics of it, and you know, I have it so that it's functional. And so then I did a second prototype just playing, and I really love this one. I created a really organic little spiral. And before I did the rest of my bending, making the cradle for the donut, before I did that, I put it on my bench block and I hammered it and did the whole thing. And then at the end, I was looking at it and I thought, why couldn't I add more to it? So I took some, I'm using 20 gauge wire for this. And this part, you know, is going to be very free form, very organic, and you could make any shape and any kind of squiggle for this bit that, you know, your wire suggests that you do or that you see in your mind. But I just took some 24 gauge wire, the same color as this one, but a contrast color can be really pretty too. And I did a few wraps around and added in some crystals. And so you could have continued going. You could, it looked really pretty with just the wire. So from here, you know, you can embellish in any way you want or just leave it plain. So let me do one of these with you. I'll kind of show you my method. So I took a pretty long piece of this 20 gauge. My wire bag is a mess, but I always use the Beadalon German style wire. It's medium temper and it's round, and I like the 20 gauge. It's not so hard on your hand. And I have another wire that I do like to use too that also has the anti-tarnish coating on it. And let me see if I have it handy. This one is from Art Beads, and this is their non-tarnish. It's called designer wire, and it's their non-tarnished 20 gauge. And I like that one as well. So I actually have a new spool of this one. because I'm getting to the end of my other, but that's what I used. And of course you could go up to 18 or even 16 gauge wire if you're better at wire working than I am, and you know, if your hands are strong. But I really like this 20 gauge wire, especially for something that's, you know, I don't really believe that I could do two of these exactly the same, and I really quite like this one, but I think I could even, you know, improve on it. Every time I make one, I get better. So the first thing that I did was take my round nose pliers, which are right here, and I'm going to go for a spiral, and I'm going to go for kind of an open spiral. And so I'm just going to kind of get it going. A lot of times when I make my spirals, I want the middle to be really tight, and you know, I want it to be really a compounded spiral. Compounded, is that what I want to say? No, compact, where, you know, where the coils are really tight. I guess I can't talk today. And so then, since I do want an open spiral, I'm going to sort of grab my wire on the outside of where I'm bending. And if this is not really exactly as open as I would like it, but I'm not going to worry about it just yet, because I think I will still hammer this. And when you hammer things on a bench block, they spread out a little bit. And you can also take your pliers and, you know, pull it out a little bit after it's hammered. But I'm just going to keep going. And here again, if you wanted to stop and make some bends and some wiggles and like really make this a funky, unusual shape, you totally can. And actually, I'm kind of liking what's happening here, because I got it a little bit tighter in the middle, and now I'm getting it a little bit loose as I go around. And so I am just really just making this without a project in mind. But if you have a certain gemstone donut that you love, and especially if it's one like this one has an unusual shape and some thickness. It's quite large. I don't know the millimeters, it might have been on the package, but it's nice to have the option to make this fit a certain gemstone pendant. So, you know, the start is really, really fun. I'm just making a spiral, and so, you know, like that's probably as big as I would want for this one. So I have ended up with a lot of things on my little work table. I'm going to hammer this the way that I did this one, and have this new little hammer that I am in love with. And so it's great for texture. I mean, it does flatten the wire a little bit. That is the hammer that I used on this one. And it does flatten the wire a little bit, but if the camera is showing you, the edge has a little bit of sharpness to it. And so it gives me this, and I did the front and the back, it gives me this little texture that just really appeals to me. But you could use your chasing hammer or a regular hammer, but I'm just going to pause the camera and pound this flat and give it a little bit of texture before I continue on. So I just want to show you what happens when you hammer. You actually change the structure of the wire, and it becomes a lot more rigid, a lot less malleable. And so I just want to mention to you that since we still have a lot of work to do with bending and wrapping on this part of our bale, we don't want to hammer up there, because this part is, we really can't do too much with it after it's hammered. You can close up your, spiral a little bit. You can make little adjustments, but if at this point, if I were to try to do a lot of wrapping and a lot of work with it, I would probably break this wire. So when you're hammering, make sure you stop here, before you get to the other part of your wire. And then also for this part, I'm going to bring in a different chain nose plier than I normally use. It's a little bit bigger, and it has this little bit of a square edge here. And let me just see if I can show you on this one. That is what I use to make the little cradle for the donut. This plier just worked really well for that. Can you see what I did? Camera focus. And so, you know, my normal little Xuron pliers that I love would make that a little bit harder. So this might be the time to play with some of your other tools. You know, one of our sweet viewers said she's a toolaholic, and I laugh so hard because I'm a toolaholic too, and I just love my tools. I feel like I can do anything with a good stash of tools. So then what we need to do, let me see if I can show you on this one. What we need to do is get our wire, maybe the one that's not embellished would be easier to see. What we need to do is wherever our spiral has ended up, we need to get that wire to be in the center on the back. So your spiral, you just need to really bring it around to the center. Again, depending on the size of your donut, but you can adjust that later. And from there, we can start making our little cradle. So I'm going to go back to my round nose pliers and just encourage this little spiral. Let me switch hands here, switch it around. Encourage this little spiral to get down into, kind of into the middle of where you want it to be. And here's where, like, whatever shape, now I kind of like the little shape that it just took, but here's where it's very free form, very organic. You can play around here a little bit and also, you know, kind of check, like, that's really perfect for the size donut that I have, and it kind of looks like a contemporary flower or a lollipop. I kind of like that. So from here, we need to make the cradle. Now you could just make the little cradle directly from here, which I have done that on a couple of them, but I find that if I give it a little extra bend, it's a little bit more stable. So let's do that. And also I was just going to mention too that I hammered and textured like both sides in case I wanted to switch my design around, you know, when I'm making the cradle. On this one I don't think I will, but I'm just going to come in with my pliers wherever I want to start that cradle that I'm making. And so I'm just going to, whoops, I didn't hold it tight enough. Hold it really tight and then bend your wire, and I'm going to close that nice and tight and kind of get it in the position. I think I do kind of like that little point that I made at the top. So just kind of encourage it to go where you want. Okay. And I'm just going to straighten and warm this wire before I continue. So I have that little bit done, and now I can get my plier in there and give it another bend. Let's see. I guess let me see how this is going to end up. Oh, I think that's going to end up working better on the bottom. Every one of these that I have done has turned out a little bit different. And so it's really, I just kind of look at it and see. And so if this one I kind of like where this is crossing, because that would be a good place to add in some smaller gauge wire and add some beads if we want to. But then I'm going to kind of choose, so on this plier, like the further down that I go, the wider of a bend I'm going to get. So let me just go right about there, and I'm just going to bend that wire up. And again, this is like not permanent. You can make adjustments. So there I have that little cradle, and from here we can, you know, try and see how the donut is sitting. So it's, see how, and if you want it that way, if you like it that way, that's fine. It looks a little bit better to me when the little spiral is in the middle of the donut. So what I need to do is move my little cradle down just a tiny bit. So just a little bit of an adjustment here. I find that if I go slowly and if I take a look at where my wire is on my plier, I can generally get an idea where that wire is going to bend or what the path of that wire is going to be. And this is really fun. I was going to say, you know, maybe this isn't for beginners. And then I thought this is absolutely for beginners because there's no right or wrong. And each, you know, how it comes out is how it comes out, which to me is the beauty of the commercially made ones are absolutely lovely. And they're perfect, you know, but this is just a little different. Oh, that's so much better. So my donut is now sitting right in the middle. So you could leave your donut in there or you can just eyeball it. The first one that I made, I really just was trying to duplicate the style. So I want my loop to be going front to back so that a necklace can go this way. And my other advice is to do a little bit larger loop so that this could be alternated on different chains. So I want to leave a stem because you want to thicken this up by wrapping down. So it's going to be essentially what we do on a wire wrapped loop, only quite a bit longer. Just realize it's so hard to see with all these things beneath my hands, but it's going to be quite a bit longer of a stem than we normally have when we wire wrap a normal bead, and you can determine that for yourself. So I want my loop to be going front to back. So I guess, and you also want to see how much wire you have here because this is how much you have to wrap down. So I'm just going to guess right about there and give my wire that 90-degree bend. And from here, it's really just the way we do a wire wrapped loop, but I want a very large bail on this one. So I'm going to go down to the fatter side of the cone shape of my round nose pliers so that I get a little bit larger bail, and that way it has the possibility for this to string onto different necklaces, leather, or, you know, go over different clasps. And from here, it's just a normal wire wrapped loop. And so it gets a little bit tricky because you have to now wrap down, and I pretty much use up whatever wire is left on my, oh, you know what? Let me just check and see. Yeah, I usually do these where the donut is not on the ones I've done. I just made it, and I want to make sure that I can get it off and that it will go through the whole of my donut, and it looks like it will. Let me go ahead and take it off. That's the thing. I don't know what it is, but I can sit here quietly by myself and make things, and they just turn out great. And there's something about the camera rolling, even though I'm sitting here by myself with my dog and my cat under the table, there is just something about the camera being on that, you know, I don't know, Murphy's Law. Start to have things go wrong. So the way I have been doing these is really neat wraps, just all the way down the length. Let me tidy up this loop a little bit. Just all the way down. But if you like an organic, messy wrap, and if you've left yourself enough wire, you don't have to do a super neat one. I don't know why, but I just think this looks better coming from behind the donut. And so, you know, also maybe depending on what you have done here, you could determine if you want to do like a really messy wrap. And so the only trickiness to this is that as you go down this other wire, you'll start to feel that, you know, things are bending a bit because it is a long wrapped stem. So I did, yeah, you see, it just gets to where it's a little bit precarious to hold on to the loop and to keep wrapping, but just do the best you can, and remember that you can always straighten out wire and make adjustments when you're done with your wraps. If you guys have ever seen this, I'd never seen a donut holder like this, and I don't know if I would have even known what it was if the shop owner hadn't had a sample donut in. I just want to tidy that up. I might have to do it with my round nose pliers. So at any point you could cut off your tail. I'm just going to try to use as much of it as I can. And I want my last, but as you go down on the stem, you'll see that it gets a little bit harder to tighten your coils. And I'm happy that I get to cut it off in the back, so that's going to give me a nice pretty wrapped core wire. And just even like in a normal wrap, just tuck the wire. And straighten things if you want. It's a pretty cute one. And try it out. And it looks great. My own little organic donut holder. And like I said, on this one, it was really fun. I took some of that same wire in 24 gauge and just took a little length of it, and I chose a few crystals. And I was also thinking that if I use this on different gemstones, that I would want to choose something sort of neutral here that would go with different gemstones. And you know, so just a little 24 gauge wire, and you could embellish, or you could actually, it was really pretty when I just did a few wraps. So if you wanted to choose a place on your design, you know, like maybe on this one right there, to do a few wraps and do a few here, and just to add a little texture and kind of bring in this coiled look down to the front part of the bale. But this is a really cool, fun little project. I enjoyed the challenge of trying to make something. And again, I did buy the little set of commercial ones and I like them, but I really enjoyed the challenge of making my own little holder, and you know, grateful for the shop for giving me that great idea. So the next thing is kind of a little bit of a surprise. I'm laughing because it's another one of those things that I just had so much fun with. And again, it was sort of the challenge. I have to clean up my workspace a little bit because otherwise I can't concentrate. So this one was a little bit of a challenge, and I'll show you where it came from. So I was in one of our craft stores, Hobby Lobby, and this was $4.99 for these two little hot air balloons, and I thought they were absolutely adorable. But when I started looking at them, I said, oh my goodness, this is just a fluted bead, and it's a bead cap and then one of those sort of bead cones, which I have in every color, and the little basket on the hot air balloon is a cube bead. And it is simple loops on the top and bottom. And you have your own charm, your own pendant, whatever kind you would want to use this little finding for. So I bought these so that I could see how mine would stack up looking for it. So when I went into my stash looking for a large fluted bead that could be my hot air balloon, surprisingly, I did not have one. But I did really like this pearl, but it is not fluted. So I will show you what I did to get my little bit of fluting, and I didn't do as much as I intend to do because I wanted to share it with you, but I literally went into my supplies, another piece of that 20 gauge wire, and I just made a simple loop on one end, and then I put the bottom of my hot air balloon is just one of those little bead caps, and then this is just a glass pearl, and I use some acrylic markers to make the lines like you would see on the hot air balloon if it has the netting over it, and then another bead cap on the top. And so I'll show you my sample bead. This was I took one of those, these are leftover from the curated bead box. They are the beautiful, inexpensive glass pearls that we get in the curated bead box. And you know, I was just having a chat with someone about that being a value box and what kinds of beads you get. And there are so many uses for beads that are not super expensive. And I just love that. And so for this one, I decided this is my sample bead with my pens. So I have this fabulous set of markers that I love. I have played with these on so many different of my jewelry findings. So I decided to make this a little test bead so that I could check out the colors and see how things work. But these markers is what I use to make my little hot air balloon lines on the bead, and I'll just show you the way I have mine stored. They are acrylic markers, and let me open the box without hitting the camera. You have to store them horizontally, which is counterintuitive because we always think, you know, markers going up and down like in a pen cup, but it's so that the paint doesn't all rest on one end of the marker and, you know, and then not have it on the other end, because these markers have a skinny tip and a fat tip. And this was a set of 24, and I believe they go all the way up to like a set of 48 where you can get a lot of colors. But it comes with, I have mine sort of separated by the neutrals. It comes with a gold, a silver, a black, a brown, and then there are some pretty greens and blues and some pinks and peaches. And I did another video with the Pantone colors of the year and actually found my 2 colors perfectly in this marker set. I love these acrylic markers. I have colored bead caps with them. It makes bead caps look almost as if they're enameled or kind of take on that cloisonné look. So in order to do my little lines on the balloon, there is a skinny tip on these markers, and there's also a fat tip. And I did the fat tip on these, and you can hold the bead for this particular design right in your hand, because the lines don't need to go all the way to the hole because it's going to be covered up with our findings. So I just did as best I could my little hot air balloon lines, and I'm just going to go around. It's such a small surface and it's such a small amount of paint that it just dries really fast. I can put one right in there. And it just changed the look of this pearl and solved my problem of not having a fluted bead for my hot air balloon. I thought it was so cute. And it takes a very inexpensive glass pearl and makes it look like so much more than what it is. So there's my little hot air balloon, and I'm just going to tell you what these pens say really quickly while I give this a moment to dry. This says works on various surfaces like paper, canvas, glass, ceramic, plastic, wood, steel, etc. So even on like our stainless steel findings that tend to be a bit dull and gray, but they're great because they don't tarnish, these would work on it. And I have tried it on many of the base metal findings that we use in jewelry making to change the colors of things to cover up tarnish when a bead cap has tarnished and I don't want to lose a piece. I am in love with these markers, and I have used them for so many things. So I'm going to just put this on here and show you really quickly before we move on with our little hot air balloon. This was my test bead because I got the idea of, if you're making your own charm, of using these markers to do a monogrammed bead. So if you were doing wine glass charms, and you knew your dinner guests or your family members, you could personalize. Each one could have a large bead and you write their name or do a monogram like with their initials on the bead. And if you were doing a charm for a little bracelet, you could put like a little message with these markers on a glass pearl. So I was just playing around, and I think I'm going to take one and just see about writing my name. This pink on the pink worked really well, but here again is another great use for inexpensive glass pearls and beads that we get from Curated Bead Box. Yeah, much better. So yeah, you can like go over it. There's my J, my O, my E, my E. And like I said, you can let this dry and you can give it a second coat. And it dries so fast. I mean, it's already dry. So I just thought I would share that with you. I got these from Amazon, and they are really fun for jewelry makers with our metal findings, and I can link them below. I have not ordered a larger set, but I intend to. I really love these, and I only got the set with the 24 colors, but now that I've played with them and see how well they work, I definitely want more colors. So then the other thing to my little hot air balloon is that I used one of these softer, malleable little flower bead caps, and it comes like this, and I didn't want to damage the pearl. It came like that where it didn't quite fit down over my pearl. So you can do this with your pliers, or you can, let me take the one I didn't do, or I took my bench block, and let me put my bench block right under the camera, and I just put the bead cap there, and with my thumb I just pressed it a little bit to flatten it out. And like I say, these are really soft, so you can go back in and, you know, make little adjustments to make it fit your bead. I didn't want to push it and shape it right over the bead because I didn't want to scrape the coating off of my glass pearl. And I think I'm going to just do a little wire wrapped loop. And then this is the cutest. This can be a beautiful little pendant or a little charm for a charm bracelet. So let me just get a loop in here really quickly. And then we will add our basket to the bottom. And again, this was a little finding that is so easy to make. The little basket is just a cube bead, and in my own stash, of course, you would know that I have pink cube beads. So I'm going to take that little tiny scrap of wire, and here you could make a, here you could use a head pin for this, or you could make your own head pin. 20 gauge is a little bit too thick to do the knotted head pin, but sometimes what I do is just get that little tiny loop in there like that and get a hold of it and just bend it straight up, and so it just acts as my little bead stopper. This is a crystal, so what I'm doing is, I should be doing with nylon jaw pliers, but just to flatten that a little bit. And now just put a simple loop on this. I want it to be a really small one, so I'm going to trim that away and just roll that little piece of wire back into a simple loop. And I'm going to open it and add it to the bottom of my little hot air balloon. And look how adorable that little hot air balloon is. Oh my gosh, I think that is the cutest little finding. And from here, like I said, you could make a pendant. This could be a bookmarker. This could be a purse charm. This could go as a little charm on a bracelet. I think it's adorable, and I think it's just as lovely as the commercially made one that I found at the craft store. And I was making and realized I did not have the proper findings. So then I started going through my supplies to see what I had that I could use and make it work. So I wanted a little pair of bow earrings, but I wanted them to hang the way ribbons do and not be rigid on wire. And so I made my little bow on I threaded a needle, a number 10 needle. I threaded, I have it too far down, with this 4-pound fire line. And I do have a little bit of E6000 glue on my table. And these are pearls from the bargain bead box, but I needed an earring post that you glue your earring finding right onto the front, and I did not have one. So what I went through everything that I had in findings, and what I ended up doing, I don't know if you can tell what it is, but this is a cord end. It's one of those leather cord ends that has a little tiny tooth right here. I use these for my bookmarkers. They will grab a piece of satin cording or leather cording, and you just take your pliers and you fold it over. So however you have to get it started, and it's much harder when you don't have it attached to something. It's hard to hang on to, but you know, just get it however you have to. Just get a hold of it. And so normally your cording would be in that space when you crimp this down, when you take your pliers and crimp it down. but I needed something with the loop. So now I have that little loop and I have that folded over, and now it is ready to get glued onto the back of my little floppy pearl bow that I made, and I could simply add my ear wire. So, you know, I was making and I didn't want to stop making, and I really wanted not to have wire. I wanted this to hang like that, and I thought I would share that with you because we don't always have to use our findings and our supplies the way that everybody else uses them. And so that way I had my little earrings, and I will go ahead and show you how I did the pearl bow because it's all on one string and it's really easy. It looks a little bit more complicated than it is. So let me just clear some things off my work table. So, and I'll lay this one out so you can see where we're going. But I did an odd number of pearls for the petals. And the way you start is with some kind of a center bead. I like this little gold check glass bead in gold. You could put a metal bead there and just string that down to the middle. This is about a 15-inch piece of string, and I know it's clear, it's probably a little difficult to see, but I just strung that to the middle, and then I did an odd number of pearls. So I did 7 pearls for each of my bow loops, and I'm just going to string those right on. And let me get up to the camera so you can see. And then I'm going to bring my needle back through that center bead, and that when I pull it, that's going to make my little bow loop. So that's what I have. And now my thread is on this side, and now I can even pull it. So I know it's really difficult to see this thread that matches the pearls, but I'm just pulling it so that I have not so much of a tail down here and my little loop is there. And I'm going to do the same thing for this other side. So if you guys, any of you that are watching this, have seen any of my recent videos, you know that I really love to watch the fashion shows. I love the artistry of the runway. I have been noticing that pearls are going to be a big trend. But in our day and age, we can wear pearls with a white t-shirt and a pair of jeans and look really elegant and classy. And so I just am really inspired by that trend, and I love it. And then I was listening to one commentator, and she was saying that with bows, they are back in trend. They never really leave the fashion scene, but people either love them or hate them. I love bows, and especially if they're done in a classy, elegant, subtle way, like a little softly draping pearl bow in your ear. I just love it. So I really was happy with this design, the way it came out. So anyway, I'm just stringing another 7 pearls on the other side, and I'm going to go back with my needle, back through in the opposite direction, that center bead. And just pull it tight. And so now the 2 little loops of our bow are made. And now if you can see how it's taking shape, we're going to do, I believe I did 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Yes, I did 9 pearls for each one of the little downward drops or the ribbons of the bow. And again, you could do this with like a 22 or a 24 gauge wire. Typically the holes on pearls, even glass pearls, are quite small, and sometimes it's hard to get wire to pass back through a second time. So I decided to do it with this 4-pound thread, and I just love the movement, the dangle that it gets. So those are strung on, and I'm going to pick up that little 11-0 seed bead, but it doesn't have to be an 11-0, whatever you have as an unobtrusive little bead stopper. Or if you wanted it to be noticeable, you could do another gold bead at the end, but I just wanted it to look a bit like a ribbon bow hanging. So I'm going to slide that little seed bead down, and I can't really pick this up because as you see, it's hanging the way I'm eventually going to want it to hang. But I'm going to skip over. I don't want to put my needle back through that seed bead, because if I do, I'm just going to pull it out. I'm going to skip over that seed bead and run my needle back up through all 9 of those pearls that I just strung on. Sometimes I can do it all in one pass, and sometimes I have to, it's not that much. And it's really cool how it's a little loose right now, and then I am just going to go again, once I have it, go right back through that middle bead and just pull, 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 pull. You can take your needle off because you're going to need to rethread it to do the other little downward drop. And here you just tighten up. So it's going to be a little, nothing's tied off, but there's what we have. So I have a nice little unobtrusive, and then one of these, I want the longer one. And now we're going to do the same thing on this side, and then skip over that seed bead and just run the needle just like we did on the other side, up, going back up toward the main bow. And back through our gold check glass center bead. And so like if you were trying to do this with wire, you might have to change this bead, and certainly I don't know that I think you would have trouble getting the wire to go back through up through the beads that are on the drops. So now I can take that needle off, and now I'm going to pull my 2 threads to the back and just make sure everything is hanging the way that I want it. And I think I do better laying it down on the mat so I can see. And I'm going to tie a couple of knots, just overhand knots. And so you can see my little tie is just on the back of that bead. And now where I took the little leather end cord, I want that loop to be facing forward. So I'm going to put a little bit of E6000 glue right on the front. Get my lid off. And just put, or you could put it on the bead, whatever's easier for you to see. Sometimes I do a little of both. It doesn't take much because these are not heavy at all. And I even had thought I might experiment with the gel super glue, the Loctite. I love this glue, the gel control. And so I didn't try it, but I interchange these 2 glues a lot when I'm adhering jewelry finding. So if you don't have E6000, you could certainly try that. And then you just get that little finding in there. And so on the one that's finished, if you could see what I did, I wanted the loop, I wanted that loop to just be peeking above the gold bead. And just set it there, let it dry. And go on to another project. And when that is all dry, it's a simple matter of opening the loop on the ear wire, attaching it, and this is what you have. And I tried this on my ear and it just hangs so beautifully. I was about to say goodbye, see you in the next video, and I realized there's one more finding that I make that I wanted to show you, but I did go back to my little pearl bead as well when I set my bow earring aside to dry, and I gave another coat to my name and added some little green squiggles, and then on the back, I am definitely no artist, but on the back I added some little birds and some flowers. With these fabulous markers, I used this beautiful purple to do the flower, and I thought I would just show you how non-talented I am with the drawing. But if I can do this, and I make such a mess with paint, I feel like anybody could do this. So I'm just doing like little squiggles and adding in some dots and some curves and some little green leaves, and it's just really fun to kind of add some extra dimension and texture. And I even got out a really small little crystal because there's no reason not to overlay that on, you know, on top. And so I'm using like the fine line to do my little bluebirds flying in the sky. I guess I'm already ready for spring, but it just added some little birds flying in the sky. And when I make my own boho beads, I overlay things on top of the boho beads, so sequins and little sparkles and things, and I thought, why could I not do that? So I'm going to use a little drop of this gel super glue. So it just added a little extra dimension to my little hand painted bead. It's really cute. So the last item that I wanted to show you in findings is, if any of you work with this silver silk product, I have not opened my order yet, but I have chosen a few things to make bracelets with, and I love this product. It is so unique. This one is capture chain, so it has this crocheted very fine wire over a strand of ball chain, and it's called capture chain. You might be able to see the little balls inside. And this is the other one that has a tube inside, and the crocheted wire is crocheted around the outside of the tube, is what I'm trying to explain. And what comes with the silver silk, which is beautiful, but I find it quite expensive, are these little things that go, let me take them out so you can see. I buy them sometimes from Art Beads, and they come in copper, silver, gunmetal, gold, and I do buy them sometimes from Art Beads, but I also got some with my silver silk order from the Silver Silk and More website. So they are beautiful, these little in findings. I love them. They even have the little Silver Silk logo embossed on them, and they are just absolutely lovely. So you can finish off the ends of a bracelet or a necklace with them, and they're fabulous, and there's no doubt about it, they are fabulous. And you can put your pliers in here and widen this a little bit so you don't damage your pipe chain or your capture chain, but they're wonderful, and I do buy them and I do love them. But sometimes, you know, the cost matters on things, especially when you're a person that makes a lot of jewelry. So I will sometimes make my own cones and endings for them out of wire and my round nose pliers. And I have this cool set of tools, and this is another little unusual thing that I made, but this little set of mandrels comes with an interchangeable handle, and so you have this round shape that you can wrap wire around in different circumferences, and it comes with this cool triangular one, which is what I did this one out of, and then there's also an oval. And so show you from the top, it's really a cool tool, and then you can just change out the handle, so when you're working with wire you have something good to grip onto. So I used this triangular one to make this. I just took some 22 gauge wire and wrapped it around to the length that I wanted. Let me put the handle back on and we'll do one together. But it gave me a little bit bigger hole, and that fit on the pipe chain a little bit better. It just went nicely right down the end, and it's a little bit geometric. And then I just had to take my pliers and kind of pull that top spiral in to cover up the end of the pipe chain. But it is really lovely. You can also use regular bead caps on the pipe chain and capture chain and your bead cap cones and things like that. But you, with the simple wire that you're using for the rest of the project, you can also make these lovely ends. So I can show you, let me go ahead and cut this one off, and I'll show you very quickly how I did each of these. So this is 22 gauge wire, and I just use the cone shape on my round nose pliers and get it started somewhere, depending on the size hole you want. And literally, it's almost that same motion that we make when we're making our own jump rings or when we want to do a knotted head pin. The only trick is to have your, how can I say, your rounds of wire close to each other as you go down the cone. But I don't even worry about that so much, because while it is still on my tool, I can come in with another pair of pliers and pull it together, and I can, trim away if I have it a little bit too long, like if I've made too long of a cone. It's the exact same thing with this one. I did use, let me see, I did use this 22 gauge wire for this one, and just cut off a little length and do another little sample. And it's just a simple matter. The only difference on this one is that the opening of the spiral or the cone is a little bit, maybe a little bit too wide. You would be able to see, down through it. So I'll show you what I did for that, but it's really pretty. This one's a little bit geometric, which to my mind goes really well with the pipe chain. And same thing, you can, while it's on this tool, you can use your pliers to tidy things up, move those spaces in between your coils the way that you want them, and just slide it off. And so see how I closed up the top of that one? I can do the same thing. I have this cool little triangular little end cap, and I can just take my pliers here and just coil that across the top. With these, you can also spread them out. Like if you want your coil to be a little bit wider, you can also spread them out. You can play a little bit. You can also, with the triangular one, it's kind of cool to twist it. Let me go in the right direction here. You can kind of twist your triangle too to make it even more geometric. Just play with it, and you can get this really cool little end cap that just looks modern, contemporary art. I love it. So this one was a little bit straighter, but try this one on the end. So yeah, if you don't want to spend the money for expensive end caps, you can play around with your wire and some mandrels and come up with something completely unique that will only be on your project. So I have had so much fun today playing with all of my beads and my supplies and making my own findings and getting out some of my tools, because I am a toolaholic. And I really hope that this gave you guys some information, some inspiration, and that you'll look at some of your own supplies in some different ways after watching today and playing around with me on my bead mat. And I thank you so much for watching. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider doing so. It's totally free. It doesn't it doesn't commit you to anything. If you hit subscribe and then there's a little bell icon, if you tap that, you'll get my notifications. And for those of you who don't know, I will just tell you because it took me a while to figure it out. Under all of my videos, there's a little word more and some dots. If you tap that, you'll see my description. You'll see links to anything I think you might be interested in that I've been using. Any information that I think might help you with the project, with supplies, is there under more. So just to let you know, and I really do hope you'll subscribe, and thanks so much for watching, and have a great day. See you next time. Ciao, jewelry makers.